The stars bent and twisted as 12,000 warships tore through the fabric of space. Reality screamed as the Velthari Dominion's greatest armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. The ships spread across the void like a plague of metal locusts, each one bristling with weapons that had burned 100 worlds to ash. Admiral Crix Veth stood at the center of his command bridge, his forearms clasped behind his back as he watched the viewscreen. His gray-green scales caught the dim light of distant stars, and his vertical pupils narrowed as he studied the tactical display. Before him, the solar system spread out like a map of conquest. 8 planets, 1 star. And on the third world from that star, billions of creatures who had no idea death had come for them. "Report," Crixveth said. His voice was deep and cold, like stones grinding together in the dark. "All ships have completed transition, Admiral," replied his second-in-command, a younger Velthari named Scythax. "The fleet is in perfect formation. No casualties from hyperspace travel. All weapon systems are online and ready." Crixveth allowed himself a small click of satisfaction. 12,000 ships, 40 million soldiers. Enough firepower to crack the crust of a planet and boil its oceans into vapor. This was the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled for a single conquest, and it was his to command. Some might have called it excessive. After all, the intelligence reports had been clear about this species called humans. They had only achieved space travel 300 years ago. They had spread to a handful of planets and moons within their own system, but they possessed no faster-than-light capability. Their weapons were primitive chemical explosives and simple directed energy beams. Their strongest warships would crumble like dry leaves against Velthari hull plating. But Crixveth had not become the most decorated admiral in the Dominion's history by underestimating his enemies. He had seen what happened to commanders who grew careless. He had watched their bodies float in the vacuum of space, their ships burning around them. No, Crixveth believed in overwhelming force. He believed in absolute victory. He believed in leaving nothing to chance. Besides, this conquest was special. This was not just another world to add to the Dominion's territory. This was a message. The humans had been discovered 50 years ago by a Velthari scout ship. The scout had observed their system from a distance, recording their radio transmissions, studying their primitive satellites, watching their clumsy attempts at colonization. The report had classified them as a Category 3 species, intelligent enough to be useful as slaves, but far too weak to pose any threat. The Dominion had conquered 600 worlds across 3 galaxies. They had ended 112 sentient species who had been foolish enough to resist. The universe had learned to fear the Velthari, and that fear kept the Dominion's empire stable. When new species were discovered, they were given a choice: surrender and serve, or be destroyed. Most chose to surrender. Those who did not became examples for others. The humans would be such an example. 20 years ago, a Velthari diplomat had visited the human homeworld. He had delivered the standard ultimatum: submit to the Dominion, provide tribute and soldiers, and be allowed to live. The humans had refused. Not just refused, they had laughed. Their leaders had called the Velthari space lizards, and threatened to show them what humanity was made of. The insult had spread across the Dominion like fire. For the first time in 300 years, a primitive species had dared to defy them, had dared to mock them. The Emperor himself had ordered this armada assembled. He had commanded Crixveth to make an example that the galaxy would never forget. "How long until we reach the 3rd planet?" Crixveth asked. "At current speed, approximately 14 hours, Admiral," Scythax replied. "However, our sensors indicate the humans have detected our arrival. They are transmitting emergency signals across their system." "Good," Crixveth said. "Let them panic. Let them understand what is coming for them." He turned to his communications officer, a small Velthari with quick hands and nervous eyes. "Broadcast the standard message. Demand their unconditional surrender. Inform them that any resistance will result in the complete destruction of their species." The communications officer nodded and began working at her console. Within moments, the message was racing toward the inner system at the speed of light. It would reach the human homeworld in about 4 hours. Their response, if they chose to send one, would take another 4 hours to return. Crixveth did not expect them to surrender. He hoped they would not. A quick surrender would deny him the pleasure of demonstrating the Dominion's power. He wanted the humans to fight. He wanted to crush their fleets, burn their cities, and drag their leaders before the Emperor in chains. He wanted the galaxy to watch and remember. The hours passed slowly. The Armada moved deeper into the solar system, passing the outer planets without incident. Krixveth studied the tactical data on the human defenses. They had small patrol ships scattered throughout the system, a few orbital stations around their home world, some kind of military presence on the fourth planet, which they called Mars. Nothing that could threaten his fleet. Nothing that could even slow them down. The response came faster than expected. "Admiral," the communications officer said, her voice suddenly uncertain, "we are receiving a transmission from the humans. Display it." The view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was a female, Krixveth noted, though he found it difficult to tell the difference with these soft-skinned creatures. She had dark hair cut short and eyes that were unnervingly calm. She wore some kind of uniform, gray with silver markings that Krixveth did not recognize. "This message is for the commander of the Velthari fleet," the human said. Her voice was steady, almost bored. "You have entered the sovereign territory of the United Human Coalition. You are in violation of the boundary established by the Solar Defense Accord." Krixveth's mandibles clicked in amusement. Sovereign territory, as if these creatures had any right to claim the stars, as if their pathetic boundary meant anything against the might of the Dominion. The human continued. "You are hereby ordered to withdraw beyond the orbit of Neptune immediately. Failure to comply will be interpreted as an act of war and will be met with appropriate force." The message ended. The view screen returned to the starfield. For a moment, there was silence on the bridge. Then Sithax began to laugh. Other officers joined him, their clicks and hisses filling the command center with mocking sounds. Even Krixveth allowed himself a rare smile. "Appropriate force?" Sithax repeated, shaking his head. "These creatures are either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both," Krixveth said. "It does not matter. They have made their choice." He was about to order the fleet to increase speed when another transmission arrived. This one was different. It was not a video message but a simple text signal, transmitted in flawless Velthari script. The communications officer read it aloud, her voice trembling slightly. "You were warned. The boundary is absolute." Krixveth frowned. There was something about the message that bothered him. The humans should not have been able to write in Velthari. Their species had no contact with the Dominion's culture, no access to their language databases. And yet the script was perfect, without a single error. "How did they learn our language?" he asked. "Unknown, Admiral," the communications officer replied. "Perhaps they captured records from the diplomatic mission 20 years ago." "Perhaps?" Krixveth was not convinced, but he pushed the concern aside. It did not matter how the humans had learned to write Velthari. What mattered was that they had refused to surrender. What mattered was that they would soon learn the cost of that refusal. "Maintain course and speed," he ordered. "All ships, prepare for combat operations. I want the fleet at full battle readiness by the time we reach the fourth planet." The Armada surged forward. As the hours passed, Krixveth found himself studying the human system with growing interest. Despite his contempt for the species, he had to admit that they had made impressive progress for such a young civilization. Their colonies on the fourth planet showed signs of extensive development. Their asteroid mining operations were surprisingly efficient. Their communications network was sophisticated and well-organized. If they had been given another 1,000 years, they might have become a genuine threat. But they would not have another 1,000 years. They would not even have another 1,000 hours. The fleet passed the fifth planet, a massive gas giant that the humans called Jupiter. It was the largest planet in the system, a swirling ball of hydrogen and helium that could have swallowed the Velthari homeworld 1,000 times over. Krixveth noted the human research stations orbiting several of its moons. Small, fragile structures that would burn like candles when his ships passed. "Admiral," Sithax said suddenly, "our long-range sensors are detecting unusual activity near the fourth planet." "Explain." "The humans appear to be mobilizing their fleet. We are tracking approximately 200 vessels moving to intercept our approach." Krixveth studied the tactical display. 200 ships, against his 12,000. The humans were either mounting a token resistance or they truly did not understand what they were facing. Their largest vessel is approximately 300 meters in length, Sithax continued. Primitive fusion reactors, chemical projectile weapons, low-yield energy cannons. Nothing that can penetrate our shields. A screening force, Krixveth decided. They are buying time for an evacuation. Sensible, but pointless. He turned to his tactical officer. When we engage the human fleet, I want them destroyed quickly and completely. No survivors. No escape pods. Let them see that resistance is meaningless. Yes, Admiral. The Armada crossed the orbit of Mars without incident. The small human fleet hung in space ahead of them, 200 ships arranged in a defensive formation. They looked like insects preparing to face a tidal wave. Krixveth opened a channel to the entire Armada. All ships. This is the Admiral. The enemy fleet is in range. You are authorized to engage and destroy. Show no mercy. Leave no survivors. For the glory of the Dominion. 12,000 ships opened fire. The human fleet died in seconds. Their shields flickered and failed under the weight of concentrated fire. Their hulls cracked and shattered. Their reactors exploded, turning each ship into a brief flower of flame that quickly faded in the cold vacuum. 200 ships, thousands of human soldiers, all gone in the time it took Krixveth to draw a breath. Enemy fleet destroyed, Sithax reported. No survivors detected. Excellent. Krixveth felt a warm glow of satisfaction. Continue on course to the third planet. I want to be in orbit within 6 hours. The Armada moved forward, leaving the wreckage of the human fleet behind. Ahead, the blue-green marble of Earth hung in the darkness, growing larger with each passing minute. Soon, Krixveth would stand in its skies and watch it burn. Soon, the humans would learn the price of defiance. He did not notice the silence. The human system had been alive with radio signals when the Armada arrived. Millions of transmissions, billions of electronic pulses, a constant background noise that the Velthari sensors had easily detected. But now, as the fleet moved past the wreckage of the human ships, that noise began to fade. The transmissions grew quieter. The electronic chatter diminished. It was as if the entire system was holding its breath. Admiral, the communications officer said quietly, we are no longer receiving signals from human space. What do you mean? All transmissions from the inner system have stopped. The satellites, the colonies, the homeworld itself. Everything has gone silent. Krixveth frowned. That was strange. Even a species facing certain death would continue to communicate. They would plead for mercy, scream for help, transmit final messages to loved ones. They would not simply go quiet. Perhaps they have finally accepted their fate, Sithax suggested. Perhaps. Krixveth was not convinced. There was something wrong here, something he could not quite identify. Increase sensor range. I want to know everything that is happening in this system. The sensor officers worked at their consoles, but their expressions grew increasingly confused. One of them, an older Velthari with scarred scales, turned to face the Admiral with an uncertain look. Sir, our sensors are not detecting any anomalies. No hidden fleets. No weapons platforms. No energy signatures beyond normal background radiation. Then why have the humans gone silent? I do not know, sir. Krixveth stared at the view screen. The planet Earth hung before him, blue and green and white, deceptively peaceful. Beyond it, the yellow star burned steadily, indifferent to the violence being done in its light. Something was wrong. He could feel it now. A cold sensation crawling up his spine. In 300 years of warfare, Krixveth had learned to trust his instincts. He had survived ambushes and traps and assassination attempts because he had listened to that quiet voice in his mind that whispered of danger. And now that voice was screaming. All ships, reduce speed, he ordered. Tighten formation. I want all sensors at maximum sensitivity. The Armada slowed. The ships drew closer together, their shields overlapping, their weapons ready. 12,000 vessels, prepared for any attack. But the attack did not come. The stars remained silent. The void remained empty. There was nothing to fight, nothing to fear, nothing at all. Krixveth stood on his bridge and waited. And then, without warning, a ship vanished. It was the Times Crimson Fang Asterisk, a destroyer-class vessel on the fleet's starboard flank. One moment it was there, transmitting telemetry, its lights blazing against the darkness. The next moment, It was gone. No explosion, no debris, no distress signal. It simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been there at all. What happened? Krixveth demanded. Where is the Times Crimson Fang asterisk? Unknown, Admiral. Sithax replied, his voice suddenly tight with fear. We lost all contact. Sensors show nothing. It is as if the ship was never there. Before Krixveth could respond, another ship vanished. Then another. Then 5 more. Then 20. Across the fleet, ships were disappearing without explanation. No attacks, no weapons fire, no enemies to fight. Just nothing. One moment they were there. The next moment they were gone. Krixveth felt the cold sensation in his spine spread through his entire body. This was wrong. This was impossible. This was something his experience had never prepared him for. All ships, full reverse, he shouted. Get us out of here. But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. The Armada was coming apart around him, ships vanishing by the dozen, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The boundary, the human message had said. The boundary is absolute. For the first time in 300 years, Admiral Krixveth understood what it meant to be afraid. The bridge of the Times' eternal subjugation times had become a place of chaos. Officers screamed into their communication devices. Warning lights flashed red and yellow across every console. The tactical display, which had shown 12,000 warships in perfect formation just minutes ago, now flickered with hundreds of empty spaces where ships had been. Admiral Krixveth stood at the center of it all, his 4 arms gripping the railing in front of him so tightly that his claws left marks in the metal. His eyes moved across the viewscreen, watching his fleet die, and he could not understand what he was seeing. How many? He demanded. How many ships have we lost? Sithax checked his console with shaking hands. 3,000, Admiral. 3,000 ships in the last 11 minutes. And the rate is increasing. 3,000 ships, 12 million soldiers, gone without a trace. And there was nothing on the sensors. No enemy fleet, no weapons fire, no missiles or beams or bombs. The ships were simply vanishing, one after another, erased from existence by an invisible hand. This is impossible, Krixveth whispered. This cannot be happening. But it was happening. As he watched, another cluster of ships disappeared from the tactical display. 50 vessels, including 2 heavy cruisers, simply stopped existing. Their lights went out. Their signals ended. Where they had been, there was only empty space. Admiral, we are receiving emergency transmissions from across the fleet, the communications officer reported. Her voice was high and thin with fear. Captains are reporting that their ships are being disassembled. Disassembled? What do you mean? I do not know, sir. Captain Vreth of the Times Iron Claw Times reported that his hull was dissolving. He said it was like the metal was turning to dust. Then his signal cut off. Krixveth felt his stomach twist. Dissolving. Turning to dust. What kind of weapon could do that? What kind of technology could reach through shields and armor and simply unmake a ship? Show me, he ordered. Find a ship that is being attacked and show me what is happening to it. The sensor officers worked frantically at their consoles. After a moment, one of them found what the Admiral had requested. The main view screen shifted to show a Velthari cruiser, the Times Burning Star asterisk, floating in space a few thousand kilometers away. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The ship hung in the void, its running lights blinking, its engines glowing faintly. But then Krixveth saw it. A section of the hull, near the bow of the ship, was changing. The metal was losing its color, turning gray, then white, then simply fading. It was not melting or burning or exploding. It was being erased, piece by piece, atom by atom. The process spread across the ship like a disease. Within seconds, a quarter of the hull was gone. Then half. The ship's systems began to fail. Lights went out. Engines sputtered and died, and still the erasure continued, eating through the vessel from one end to the other. Krixveth saw escape pods launching from the doomed ship, small capsules carrying Velthari soldiers who were trying desperately to survive. But the invisible force did not spare them. One by one, the escape pods faded into nothing, their occupants dying without even understanding what was killing them. In less than a minute, the Times Burning Star Times was gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply gone, as if it had never existed at all. The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at the view screen, their faces frozen in horror. They had conquered 600 worlds. They had faced weapons that could crack planets, but they had never seen anything like this. "What is doing this?" Sithax asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "What are we fighting?" Crixveth did not answer. He was staring at the empty space where the times-burning star times had been, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The technology to disassemble matter at the atomic level was theoretical at best. Even the most advanced species in the galaxy had never achieved anything like it. And yet the humans, these primitive creatures who had barely left their own planet, were using it as a weapon. No, that was impossible. The humans could not have developed such technology. They were centuries behind the Dominion. They were weak. They were nothing. But the evidence was right in front of him. His fleet was dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Admiral," one of the sensor officers said suddenly, "I think I have found something." "Report." "Our sensors cannot detect the weapon itself, but I have been tracking the pattern of destruction, the ships that are being attacked. They all have something in common." "What?" "They have all crossed a specific point in space. A boundary, approximately halfway between the 5th and 4th planets. Every ship that crosses that line is destroyed. Every ship that remains on this side of the line is still intact." Crixveth felt his blood run cold. "The boundary," the human message had said. "The boundary is absolute. How did we not detect this before?" he demanded. "There was nothing to detect, Admiral. No energy field. No physical barrier. Nothing our sensors could identify. It is as if the boundary itself is invisible until a ship crosses it." Crixveth turned to his tactical officer. "Order all ships to full stop. No one crosses that line until we understand what we are dealing with." "Yes, Admiral." The order went out across the fleet, but it was too late for many. Ships that were already past the boundary continued to vanish. Vessels that had been moving too fast to stop in time crossed the invisible line and were immediately attacked. In the minutes that followed, another 500 ships were lost. When the destruction finally slowed, Crixveth took stock of what remained. Of his 12,000 warships, only 7,000 were still intact. 5,000 ships, 20 million soldiers, had been erased in less than half an hour, and they had not even reached the enemy's homeworld. "This is madness," Sithax said. He was pacing back and forth across the bridge, his tail twitching with agitation. "We should retreat. We should return to Dominion space and report what has happened." "And tell the Emperor what?" Crixveth snapped. "That we lost half our fleet to an enemy we could not see? That we fled from a species that we were supposed to conquer? I would be executed for cowardice." "Better execution than this," Sithax replied. "Whatever weapon the humans have, we cannot fight it. We cannot even detect it. If we continue forward, we will all die." Crixveth knew his second-in-command was right. Every instinct told him to run, to flee, to escape this cursed system while he still could. But he also knew what awaited him if he returned to the Dominion in defeat. The Emperor did not forgive failure. The Emperor did not accept excuses. Crixveth would be lucky if death was the worst punishment he received. "There must be a way," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. "No weapon is perfect. No defense is absolute. There must be a weakness we can exploit." He turned to his science officers. "Analyze the boundary. Study the destruction pattern. Find me something I can use." The science officers worked in frightened silence, their instruments scanning the empty space where thousands of ships had died. Minutes passed. The surviving fleet held its position, too afraid to move forward, too stubborn to retreat. Finally, the senior science officer approached the Admiral with a data tablet in his hands. His scales were pale, and his eyes kept darting toward the view screen as if he expected his own ship to start dissolving at any moment. "Admiral, I believe I understand what is happening, but I am not sure you will believe me. Tell me, the weapon is not a weapon in any conventional sense. It is a swarm." "A swarm?" "Yes, sir. Billions of microscopic machines, each one smaller than a grain of sand. They are spread throughout this region of space, invisible to our sensors, waiting for targets to enter their range. When a ship crosses the boundary, the machines activate. They attach themselves to the hull and begin to disassemble it at the molecular level." Crixveth stared at the science officer. That is impossible. No species has the technology to create machines that small. No species has the resources to deploy them across such a vast area. The evidence suggests otherwise, Admiral. The destruction pattern is consistent with nanoscale machinery. The speed of disassembly indicates highly efficient molecular manipulation. And the fact that we cannot detect the machines suggests they are designed to avoid conventional sensor frequencies. Then how do we stop them? How do we defend against something we cannot see? The science officer hesitated. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I do not know, sir. Our shields have no effect. Our armor provides no protection. The machines simply pass through any defense we have and attack the underlying material. What about targeting the machines themselves? If we flood the area with weapons fire, surely we can destroy at least some of them. We could try, Admiral. But the density of the swarm is enormous. There are trillions of machines in every cubic kilometer of space. Even if we destroyed 99% of them, the remainder would still be enough to annihilate our entire fleet. Krixveth felt something he had not experienced in 3 centuries of warfare. Despair. He had faced overwhelming odds before. He had fought enemies with superior numbers, superior technology, superior positions, and he had always found a way to win. But this was different. This was not a battle he could win through courage or cunning or strength. This was a trap, and he had walked his entire fleet into it. There is something else, Admiral. The science officer continued reluctantly. Something worse. What could possibly be worse? I have been analyzing the machine's behavior patterns. They are not operating independently. They are coordinated by some kind of central intelligence. The swarm functions as a single entity, responding to threats in real time, adapting its tactics as needed. An artificial intelligence? Yes, sir. And a sophisticated one. The way the machines targeted our ships, the order of destruction, the timing of attacks, it all suggests strategic thinking. The AI is not just defending the boundary. It is studying us, learning our weaknesses, maximizing our casualties. Krixveth closed his eyes. An intelligent weapon. A thinking machine that controlled trillions of nanoscale killers. No wonder the humans had been so confident. No wonder they had laughed at the Dominion's ultimatum. They were not primitives waiting to be conquered. They were predators, waiting for prey. Admiral, Sethak said quietly, we must retreat. There is no other option. Krixveth opened his eyes. His second-in-command was right. Every rational calculation pointed to the same conclusion. They could not win this battle. They could not even survive it if they continued forward. The only choice that made any sense was to flee. But Krixveth was not ready to give up. Not yet. Prepare a probe, he ordered. Something small, unmanned, expendable. I want to see what happens when it crosses the boundary. The order was carried out quickly. A small sensor drone was launched from one of the surviving ships and sent toward the invisible line that separated life from death. The entire bridge crew watched as the probe approached the boundary, their eyes fixed on the view screen. The moment the probe crossed the line, it began to dissolve. The cameras captured the process in horrifying detail. Microscopic particles swarmed over the drone's surface, eating through its hull, consuming its circuits, leaving nothing behind but empty space. The whole process took less than 10 seconds. Fascinating, Krixveth murmured. Even in the face of death, he could not help but admire the elegance of the weapon. It was perfect, invisible, unstoppable, and absolutely lethal. Whoever had designed it was a genius, or a monster. Admiral, we are receiving another transmission from the human system, the communications officer reported. Display it. The view screen changed to show the same human female who had sent the earlier message. She looked exactly the same as before, calm, confident, utterly unafraid. Behind her, Krixveth could see other humans working at consoles, their faces lit by the glow of holographic displays. Admiral Krixveth, the human said, I see you have discovered the Artemis network. Impressive, is it not? 11 billion drones, spread across 1 trillion cubic kilometers of space, all controlled by a quantum-linked artificial intelligence. We have been building it for 200 years. It was completed 50 years ago, just in time for your scout ship to arrive. Krixveth stared at the screen. 200 years. These creatures had been preparing for this moment for 200 years, long before the Dominion had even known they existed. "You are wondering how we knew you would come," the human continued, as if reading his thoughts. "The answer is simple. We know everything about the Velthari Dominion. We have studied you for centuries. We know your history, your culture, your military tactics. We know the locations of your 12 homeworlds. We know the names of your admirals, the strength of your fleets, the weaknesses of your technology." She leaned forward, and for the first time, Krixveth saw something cold and hard in her eyes. "We also know what you have done. 112 species, Admiral. 112 civilizations. Destroyed because they refused to bow to your empire. Children burned alive. Cities reduced to ash. Entire worlds left lifeless and dead." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire bridge. "Did you think there would be no consequences? Did you think the universe would let you continue forever?" The transmission ended. The view screen returned to the star field, showing the empty space where thousands of ships had died. Krixveth stood in silence for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "Prepare the fleet for hyperspace transition. We are returning to Dominion space." "Yes, Admiral," Sithax replied, relief flooding his voice. "Shall I send a warning to the Emperor? To tell him what we have discovered?" "No. I will deliver the report myself. The Emperor must understand what we are facing. This species, these humans, they are not what we thought they were." The surviving ships began to power up their hyperspace drives. Krixveth watched the process on his tactical display, counting the vessels as they prepared to flee. 7,000 ships. Less than 2/3 of the fleet he had brought into this system. The greatest defeat in the Dominion's history. And then the drives failed. All of them. Every ship in the fleet. The hyperspace engines powered down as if someone had simply switched them off. Warning lights flashed across the bridge of the Time's eternal subjugation asterisk, and the engineering officer turned to face the Admiral with terror in his eyes. "Admiral, we have lost hyperspace capability. The fuel cells, they are being converted into inert matter. Something is consuming them." Krixveth felt his heart stop. The machines. They had crossed the boundary while chasing the human screening force. They had been inside the swarm's range all along. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He spun toward the tactical display, and what he saw confirmed his worst fears. The nanomachines were no longer waiting at the boundary. They were inside the fleet. They had passed through the ship's shields and hulls without being detected, and now they were attacking from within. Ships began to vanish again. Not just the ones that had crossed the boundary, but all of them. The machines had been waiting, studying, learning, and now they were finishing what they had started. "All ships, emergency protocols," Krixveth shouted. "Seal all compartments. Activate internal force fields. Do something." But there was nothing to do. The machines were too small to stop, too numerous to destroy, too intelligent to fool. They ate through metal and plastic and flesh with equal ease, converting matter into energy, leaving nothing behind. Krixveth watched his fleet die, and he understood at last what the humans had done. They had never intended to let any ship escape. The boundary had not been a warning. It had been a trap, a cage, a killing ground. The Velthari Dominion had come to conquer Earth. They would never even see it. Deep beneath the rust-red surface of Mars, in a facility that appeared on no map and existed in no official record, Director Chenwei stood before a wall of holographic displays and watched the end of an invasion. The displays showed everything. Every ship in the Velthari fleet, every drone in the Artemis network, every calculation made by the quantum AI that controlled humanity's defense grid. Numbers and images and data streams flowed across the screens in endless waves, telling the story of a battle that was not really a battle at all. It was an execution. "Current status," Chenwei said calmly. The AI's voice filled the room, smooth and emotionless. "Velthari fleet strength has been reduced to 4,217 vessels. Rate of elimination, approximately 340 ships per minute. Estimated time to complete destruction, 12 minutes and 37 seconds. Chenwei nodded. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The Artemis network was performing exactly as designed, its 11 billion drones working in perfect coordination to erase the largest invasion force the galaxy had ever seen. In less than an hour, there would be nothing left of the Velthari Armada but scattered atoms drifting in the void. Any attempts at communication from the enemy fleet, multiple transmissions detected, emergency distress signals, surrender requests, pleas for mercy, all have been logged and ignored per standing protocol. Good. Continue operation. Chen Wei turned away from the displays and walked to the observation window on the far side of the room. Beyond the thick glass, the Martian landscape stretched toward distant mountains, painted in shades of red and orange by the setting sun. It was a beautiful view, peaceful and serene, giving no hint of the violence being done in the space beyond the planet's atmosphere. She thought about the Velthari soldiers dying out there, millions of them, trapped in metal coffins, watching their ships dissolve around them. She wondered if they understood what was happening, if they had any idea why they were dying. Probably not. The Velthari were conquerors. They thought in terms of strength and weakness, power and submission. They could not comprehend a species that would hide its strength, that would appear weak when it was strong, that would wait centuries for the perfect moment to strike. To them, such behavior was impossible, shameful, cowardly. They did not understand that patience was the greatest weapon of all. A door opened behind her, and Chen Wei turned to see General Marcus Stone enter the room. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp blue eyes, his military uniform decorated with medals from a dozen campaigns that the public knew nothing about. He had been fighting in the shadows for 40 years, commanding fleets that did not officially exist, winning wars that were never recorded in history books. "Director," he said with a nod, "the Council has been watching the operation. They are pleased. They should be. We have been preparing for this moment for 2 centuries. It would be disappointing if things went wrong now." Stone walked to the displays and studied the tactical situation. The Velthari fleet was shrinking rapidly, ships vanishing from the projection like stars going out one by one. Hard to believe it is finally happening. After all these years of waiting, hiding, pretending to be weak, after all the times we had to watch other species suffer because we were not ready to act. "We had no choice," Chen Wei replied. "If we had revealed ourselves too soon, the Dominion would have destroyed us. We needed time to build the network, to establish our hidden infrastructure, to prepare for the war we knew was coming. I know. I understand the logic. But it was still hard, watching the Threxian homeworld burn, seeing the Kalori reduced to slaves. Knowing we had the power to help and choosing to do nothing." Chen Wei was silent for a moment. She remembered those years well. The reports that came in from across the galaxy, documenting the Dominion's atrocities, the debates within the Council about whether to intervene, the painful decision to remain hidden, to sacrifice others so that humanity might survive. It had been the right choice. She believed that. But it had also been a terrible one. "We will make them pay," she said finally. "For the Threxians, for the Kalori, for all the species they have destroyed. The Dominion will answer for everything." Stone nodded slowly. "Speaking of which, has the message been sent?" "It was transmitted the moment the first Velthari ship crossed the boundary. It will reach the Dominion's home sector in approximately 14 years. 14 years. A long time to wait for a response. We have waited longer. And besides, we will not be idle during those years. The Council has already authorized the next phase of operations." Stone raised an eyebrow. "Already? I thought we would take some time to assess the situation before moving forward." "There is nothing to assess. The Velthari came to conquer us. They failed. Now we will take the war to them. It is what we have been planning all along." She turned back to the observation window, her reflection ghost-like against the Martian sunset. 300 years ago, when we first made contact with the Remnant, they showed us the truth about the galaxy. They showed us that the universe was filled with predators who consumed young species before they could grow. They showed us what happened to civilizations that revealed themselves too soon. "The Remnant?" Stone said quietly. "I still find it hard to believe they were real. A machine intelligence 4 billion years old, watching civilizations rise and fall like seasons changing. They were real, and they saved us. In their way. They gave us the knowledge we needed to survive. They taught us how to hide, how to build, how to prepare. Without them, we would have been discovered centuries ago. We would have been destroyed like all the others. Do you ever wonder why they helped us? What they wanted in return? Chen Wei smiled thinly. They wanted someone to remember them. They were dying, their power fading, their purpose fulfilled. They had watched a million species burn and done nothing, bound by protocols that had been written when the universe was young. But with us, they found a loophole. They could not save us directly, but they could teach us to save ourselves. And now they are gone. Yes, the last of their processing cores went dark 50 years ago. We are alone now, carrying their legacy, carrying their hope that something might finally change. The AI interrupted their conversation. Director, the Velthari fleet has been reduced to 847 vessels. Admiral Krixveth's flagship, the Time's Eternal Subjugation **, remains intact. Shall I prioritize its destruction? Chen Wei considered the question. Part of her wanted to say yes, to end the invasion quickly and completely. But another part, a colder and more calculating part, had a different idea. No, delay the flagship's destruction. I want to send the Admiral one final message before he dies. Understood. Recalculating engagement priorities. Stone looked at her curiously. What are you planning? The Velthari need to understand what is happening to them. They need to know that this is not random chance or bad luck. They need to know that they have been judged and found guilty. She walked to a communication console and began entering commands. More importantly, the Dominion needs to understand. When our message reaches their home sector, they will learn that their invasion fleet was annihilated. But that alone might not be enough. They might think it was a fluke, a one-time event, something that could never happen again. You want to make sure they know we are coming for them. Yes, I want them to feel what their victims have felt. I want them to know what it is like to be hunted by something they cannot stop. The communication system activated, and Chen Wei began recording her message. She spoke calmly and clearly, explaining who the humans were, what they had built, and what they intended to do. She described the Artemis network in detail, knowing that the information would terrify the Dominion's leaders. She listed the coordinates of every Velthari homeworld, every major shipyard, every strategic installation. She made it clear that humanity knew everything about their enemy and was coming to destroy them. When she finished, she transmitted the message to the Time's Eternal Subjugation *. Let the Admiral hear it in his final moments. Let him understand that his empire's days were numbered. Director, the AI reported. Message transmitted. The Admiral's ship will be destroyed in approximately 3 minutes. Good. Resume normal elimination protocols. On the displays, the last Velthari ships were vanishing. 800 became 500. 500 became 200. The Artemis network worked with mechanical precision, its drones disassembling matter with the same efficiency that they had been designed for. No mercy, no hesitation, no survivors. Chen Wei watched the destruction with cold satisfaction. These creatures had come to enslave her species. They had intended to burn Earth, to murder billions, to add humanity to the list of civilizations they had exterminated. They deserved everything that was happening to them. But even as she thought this, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning. This was how the Velthari had started. This was how all conquerors started. With righteous anger, with justified vengeance, with the belief that their enemies deserved to die. She pushed the thought away. Humanity was different. Humanity had to be different. They were not conquerors. They were liberators. They were going to free the galaxy from the Dominion's tyranny and create something better. Weren't they? Director, Stone said, breaking into her thoughts. The Council wants to know if you have any final observations before the operation concludes. Chen Wei took a deep breath. Tell them that the Artemis network has performed beyond expectations. Tell them that our technology is ready for deployment against the Dominion's core systems. And tell them. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Tell them that we must be careful. We are about to become the most powerful force in the galaxy. That kind of power can corrupt even the best intentions. Stone nodded slowly. I will pass along your message. On the displays, the final Velthari ships were disappearing. 50 remained, then 30, then 10. The drones worked with relentless efficiency, consuming metal and flesh and leaving nothing behind but empty space. The Time's Eternal Subjugation Times was the last to die. Chen Wei watched as the nanomachines swarmed over its hull, eating through armor and bulkheads, disassembling systems and structures. She imagined Admiral Krixveth on his bridge, watching his ship dissolve around him, understanding at last that he had been outmatched from the very beginning. Did he feel fear in those final moments? Did he feel regret? Did he think about all the species he had destroyed and wonder if this was some kind of cosmic justice? She would never know. The flagship vanished from the display, its signal cutting off abruptly, and the tactical projection showed nothing but empty space where 12,000 warships had been. Operation complete, the AI announced. Velthari fleet eliminated. 0 survivors, 0 escapees. All ship debris has been fully processed by the Artemis network. Chen Wei let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. It was done. The invasion was over. Humanity had won its first battle against the Dominion without losing a single life. But this was only the beginning. In hidden bases across the solar system, fleets were being prepared. Ships that had been built in secret, armed with weapons that no other species possessed, crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The Artemis network had proven that humanity could defend itself. Now it was time to prove that humanity could attack. General Stone, Chen Wei said, contact Admiral Yoshida. Tell her to begin preparations for Operation Retribution. We launch in 6 months. 6 months? That is faster than the original timeline. The timeline has changed. The Dominion will receive our message in 14 years. They will have time to prepare, to build new defenses, to strengthen their positions. We need to strike before they are ready. Stone hesitated. Director, with respect, some members of the Council believe we should proceed more cautiously. They argue that we should wait, gather intelligence, make sure we understand what we are getting into. I understand their concerns, but caution is a luxury we cannot afford. Every day we wait, the Dominion continues its work. Every day we delay, more species suffer under their rule. We have the power to end this. We have the responsibility to use it. She turned to face the general directly, and her eyes were hard as iron. The Velthari came for Earth. They came to enslave us, to murder us, to erase us from the universe, and we destroyed them without breaking a sweat. But there are 11 other homeworlds out there, 11 centers of Veltari power, 37 major shipyards, hundreds of billions of soldiers and slaves and subjects. Her voice dropped to a whisper. We are going to tear it all down. We are going to break the Dominion into pieces and scatter those pieces across the stars. And when we are done, the galaxy will know that humanity is not a species to be conquered. We are a species to be feared. Stone was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I will contact Admiral Yoshida. Operation Retribution will begin as scheduled. Good. The general left the room, and Chen Wei turned back to the observation window. The Martian sun had set, and the sky was filled with stars. Somewhere out there, among those distant lights, the Velthari Dominion waited. They did not know that their death was coming. They did not know that the prey they had dismissed as weak and primitive was actually a predator that had been waiting centuries for this moment. Chen Wei smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had finally caught sight of her prey. The galaxy had believed humans were helpless. They were about to learn the truth, and the truth would burn. Admiral Krixveth had watched empires fall. He had stood on burning worlds and witnessed civilizations crumble to dust. He had seen species reduced from billions to nothing, their cities turned to ash, their histories erased. In 300 years of warfare, he had learned that death was the only constant in the universe. But he had never imagined that death would come for him like this. The bridge of the times, eternal subjugation times, was dying around him. The walls were fading, their metal surface turning gray and then white, and then simply disappearing. Consoles flickered and went dark as the machines that maintained them were consumed. Officers screamed and ran for exits that no longer existed, their bodies dissolving as they moved. Their final cries cut short as the nanomachines reached their lungs. Krixveth did not run. There was nowhere to go. The entire ship was being eaten from the inside out, and even if he somehow reached an escape pod, those had already been destroyed. He simply stood at the center of his bridge, watching his world end, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. 3 hours ago, he had commanded the largest invasion fleet in the Dominion's history. 12,000 ships, 40 million soldiers, enough firepower to burn a dozen worlds. He had been so confident, so certain of victory. The humans were primitives. They had no chance against the might of the Velthari. Now those 12,000 ships were gone. 40 million soldiers were dead or dying, and Krixveth was about to join them, killed by an enemy he could not see, destroyed by a weapon he could not fight. The message from the human had played on his view screen minutes ago. He had listened to every word, his disbelief growing with each sentence. The humans had known about the Dominion for centuries. They had been preparing for this invasion since before Krixveth was born. They had built a weapon that could destroy entire fleets without firing a single shot, and they had kept it hidden until the perfect moment. "We know the locations of your 12 homeworlds," the human had said. "We are coming." Krixveth believed her. He had seen what the humans could do. He had watched them annihilate his fleet with the casual efficiency of a farmer cutting wheat. If they could build something like the Artemis network, they could build anything. Ships that could cross galaxies in days, weapons that could destroy stars, armies that could sweep through the Dominion like a plague. The universe was about to change. The Velthari, who had ruled unchallenged for 10,000 years, were about to face an enemy they could not defeat, and there was nothing Krixveth could do about it. He was going to die here, in this dissolving ship, at the edge of a solar system that should have been an easy conquest. He would not see his homeworld again. He would not stand before the Emperor and deliver his report. He would not warn his people of the storm that was coming. He would simply vanish, like all the others. One more victim of humanity's vengeance. Sithax appeared beside him, his second-in-command scales pale with terror. Half of the younger Velthari's body was already fading, the nanomachines eating through his flesh with mechanical precision. He should have been screaming in agony, but instead he was strangely calm, as if he had accepted his fate. "Admiral," Sithax said, his voice thin and distant, "I wanted to tell you. I am sorry." "Sorry for what?" "For not being stronger. For not finding a way to save the fleet. For failing you." Krixveth shook his head slowly. "You did not fail me. I failed myself. I underestimated our enemy. I led us into a trap that I should have seen coming. This defeat is mine, not yours. Do you think the Dominion will survive what is coming?" Krixveth considered the question. He thought about the 12 homeworlds, each one teeming with billions of Velthari. He thought about the vast fleets that patrolled the Empire's borders. He thought about the armies and the weapons and the resources that the Dominion commanded. "No," he said finally. "I do not think we will survive. These humans, they are not what we thought they were. They are not primitives struggling to reach the stars. They are predators, like us. But they are smarter than us, more patient, more ruthless." He looked at his second-in-command, watching the younger Velthari fade away piece by piece. "We have conquered 600 worlds. We have destroyed 112 species. We thought we were the masters of the universe. But we were wrong. We were just the loudest beasts in the forest, making enough noise to attract the attention of something far more dangerous." Sithax nodded weakly. His legs were gone now, and his torso was beginning to dissolve. "Then, this is justice. For all the species we destroyed. For all the worlds we burned. Perhaps, or perhaps it is just the way of things. The strong consume the weak. The clever defeat the foolish. There is no justice in the universe. There is only power, and those who possess it. The humans possess it now. Yes. And may the gods help anyone who stands in their way." Sithax's form dissolved completely, leaving nothing behind but empty air. Krixveth stood alone on his dying bridge, the last Velthari in the solar system, watching as the walls faded around him. He thought about his home world, a beautiful planet of purple oceans and silver forests, where he had spent his childhood hunting in the mountains and swimming in the warm seas. He had not been home in 50 years. Military duty had kept him traveling between star systems, commanding fleets, conquering worlds. He had always assumed he would return someday, when the wars were over and the Dominion's rule was secure. Now he would never see it again. And if the humans kept their promise, no one would. The purple oceans would boil. The silver forests would burn. Everything the Velthari had built over 10,000 years would be reduced to ash. "Admiral Krixveth," the voice came from the view screen, which was somehow still functioning even as the rest of the bridge dissolved. The human female appeared again, her image flickering but clear. She looked at him with eyes that held no mercy, no compassion, nothing but cold determination. "You are the last," she said. "Every other ship in your fleet has been destroyed. Every soldier under your command is dead. You are alone." Krixveth said nothing. What was there to say? "I want you to understand something before you die," the human continued. "This was not random. This was not chance. This was judgment. You came to our system intending to murder billions of innocent people. You came to enslave a species that had done nothing to harm you. You came because you believed you had the right to take whatever you wanted, to destroy anyone who stood in your way." Her voice hardened. "You were wrong. You never had that right. No one does. And now you are paying the price for your arrogance." Krixveth finally found his voice. "You think you are better than us? You think your species is more righteous, more moral, more deserving of power? You are wrong. You are just like us. You are conquerors wearing the mask of liberators. You will do the same things we have done, and you will justify it the same way we did." The human smiled coldly. Perhaps we will become what we hate. Perhaps power will corrupt us, just as it corrupted you. But that is a problem for another day. Today, you die. And tomorrow, your empire falls. She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to pierce through the view screen into Krixveth's soul. "I want you to remember this moment, Admiral. In whatever afterlife awaits you, I want you to remember that you brought this on yourself. The Velthari could have left us alone. You could have passed by our system and sought conquest elsewhere. But you chose to come for Earth. You chose to threaten our people. You chose to make us your enemy." Her voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than a shout. "We did not start this war, but we will finish it." The view screen went dark. The bridge dissolved around Krixveth, the floor beneath his feet fading into nothing. He felt the nanomachines reach his body, their microscopic forms beginning to disassemble his cells. There was no pain, just a strange tingling sensation as his physical form began to unravel. His last thought, as consciousness faded, was of the message that the humans would send to the Dominion. 14 years from now, the Emperor would learn what had happened here. He would learn that his greatest fleet had been destroyed without accomplishing anything. He would learn that a species he had dismissed as primitive and weak had somehow developed technology that made the Dominion look like children playing with sticks. And he would know that they were coming. Krixveth hoped that the Emperor would be afraid. He hoped that the ruler of the Velthari Dominion would feel the same terror that Krixveth had felt in his final moments. He hoped that the entire empire would tremble before the storm that was approaching, because that storm would show no mercy. That storm would destroy everything in its path. That storm would end the Dominion's reign forever. The humans were coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. In the depths of Mars, in a facility that did not officially exist, Director Chen Wei watched the final moments of the Velthari fleet. When the last ship disappeared from the display, she allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. It was done. The invasion was over. Humanity had won. But victory in this battle was only the first step. The real war was yet to come. Somewhere out there, across thousands of light years, the Velthari Dominion waited. 12 homeworlds, billions of soldiers, countless weapons and ships and resources. They did not know it yet, but they were already dead. The moment their fleet had crossed the boundary, they had sealed their fate. Now it was just a matter of time before humanity's vengeance reached them. Chen Wei turned to her staff. "Begin Phase 2 preparations. I want full threat assessments on all Dominion military installations within 60 days. Naval Command will need complete tactical data for Operation Retribution." "Yes, Director," replied her chief analyst, a young woman named Sarah Park. "Should we begin activating the deep cover assets?" "Yes. It's time for our friends in the Dominion to start earning their pay." Chen Wei smiled thinly. The Velthari thought they ruled an empire of loyal subjects and conquered slaves. They had no idea that humanity had spent the last century building a network of spies and saboteurs throughout their territory. Agents hidden on every homeworld, sleeper cells in every major fleet, informants in the Emperor's own court. When the war began in earnest, the Dominion would discover that their enemies were not just outside their borders. Their enemies were everywhere, waiting for the signal to strike. General Stone entered the room, his face uncharacteristically troubled. "Director, I have news from the Council." "What is it?" "They have approved Operation Retribution, but they have added a condition." Chen Wei frowned. "What condition?" They want us to offer the Velthari a chance to surrender. Before we launch our attack, we are required to send an ultimatum demanding the dissolution of the Dominion and the release of all conquered species. An ultimatum they will never accept. Probably not, but the Council believes it is important for historical purposes. They want future generations to know that we gave the enemy a choice, that we tried diplomacy before we resorted to war. Chen Wei was silent for a moment. She understood the Council's reasoning. Humanity was about to embark on a campaign of conquest that would reshape the galaxy. They needed to establish moral authority, to show that they were not just another empire seeking power for its own sake. But she also knew that the ultimatum would be rejected. The Velthari would never surrender voluntarily. They would fight until they were utterly destroyed, because that was all they knew how to do. Fine, she said finally. Draft the ultimatum. Make it clear and straightforward. Dissolve the Dominion. Release all prisoners and slaves. Accept human oversight of their military assets. If they refuse, we will consider it a declaration of war. And when they refuse, then we burn them down to the last ship and the last soldier. We destroy every weapon they possess. We liberate every world they have conquered. And we make sure that nothing like the Velthari Dominion ever rises again. Stone nodded slowly. The Council wanted me to ask you one more question. After the Dominion falls, what then? What do we do with all that power? It was a good question. Chen Wei had thought about it many times over the years. Humanity was about to become the dominant force in the galaxy. They would control more territory than any species in history. They would possess weapons that could destroy stars. What would they do with that power? Would they use it wisely, building a just and peaceful civilization? Or would they succumb to the same corruption that had consumed the Velthari? I don't know, she admitted. I hope we will be better than our enemies. I hope we will learn from their mistakes. But I cannot promise anything. Power is a dangerous thing, General. It changes people. It changes civilizations. All we can do is try our best and hope that it is enough. She turned back to the displays, watching the empty space where the Velthari fleet had been. One thing I do know. We cannot go back to hiding. We cannot pretend to be weak while the galaxy suffers. We have the power to change things. We have the responsibility to use it. Even if it means becoming what we hate, even then, because the alternative is worse. The alternative is standing by while species are exterminated and worlds are burned. The alternative is doing nothing while evil triumphs. Chen Wei's voice hardened. I would rather become a monster fighting monsters than remain pure while innocent people die. And if history judges us harshly for the choices we make, so be it. At least we will have made choices. At least we will have tried. Stone was silent for a long moment. Then he saluted slowly. I understand, Director. I will inform the Council of your response. He left the room, and Chen Wei was alone with her thoughts. Outside the observation window, the Martian night was filled with stars. Each one might harbor life. Each one might contain civilizations waiting to be freed from the Dominion's rule. The war was coming. Humanity was ready. And the galaxy would never be the same. The morning sun rose over Tokyo, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Millions of people woke to their alarms, showered, ate breakfast, and prepared for another ordinary day. Children went to school. Workers crowded onto trains. Shopkeepers opened their doors. Life continued, as it always did, without interruption or concern. None of them knew that the world had nearly ended while they slept. 12,000 warships had crossed into their solar system. 40 million alien soldiers had come to enslave them. The greatest invasion force in galactic history had arrived at their doorstep, ready to burn their cities, murder their families, and erase their civilization from existence. And they had been stopped. Completely, absolutely, without a single human casualty. In the space between Mars and Jupiter, nothing remained of the Velthari Armada. The Artemis network had done its work with perfect efficiency, disassembling every ship, every soldier, every piece of equipment into component atoms. The debris itself had been consumed, converted into raw material for the network's endless expansion. Where the fleet had been, there was only empty space, indistinguishable from any other patch of void in the solar system. The people of Earth would never know how close they had come to extinction. They would never know that their survival depended on a weapon hidden beneath the Martian surface. They would never know that their governments had been preparing for this moment for 300 years, building an invisible defense that could annihilate entire civilizations. And that was exactly how the coalition wanted it. In the secure conference room beneath Geneva, the leaders of the United Human Coalition gathered to assess the situation. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and admirals, scientists and spies, all of them connected by encrypted channels that spanned the solar system. They represented the true government of humanity, the hidden power that had guided their species through 3 centuries of secret preparation. Director Chen Wei stood at the head of the virtual table, her holographic image projected to every participant. She had not slept in 36 hours, but her eyes were clear and her voice was steady. Ladies and gentlemen, Operation Boundary was a complete success. The Velthari invasion force has been eliminated. No survivors, no escapees. Our defensive capabilities remain completely unknown to external observers. The President of the United States spoke first. What about civilian detection? Is there any chance that someone saw what happened? Negligible, Chen Wei replied. The destruction occurred beyond Mars' orbit, well outside the range of civilian telescopes. Our media suppression protocols are in effect. Any anomalous observations will be attributed to solar activity or equipment malfunction. And the other powers? Russia, China, the European Federation? All member states of the coalition have been briefed. There will be no leaks. Our people understand what is at stake. The Russian president nodded slowly. Then we proceed to Phase 2? Yes. The Council has approved Operation Retribution. We will begin deploying our offensive forces within 6 months. The first targets will be the Dominion's outer supply lines and forward bases. We will work our way inward, destroying their infrastructure, liberating their conquered worlds, and eventually striking at the homeworlds themselves. How long will this campaign take? Chen Wei hesitated. Our projections indicate between 15 and 20 years. The Dominion controls an enormous amount of territory, and even with our technological advantages, clearing it will take time. We also need to establish stable governments on the liberated worlds, which is a complicated process. The Chinese premier leaned forward. What about casualties? Our casualties? We expect them to be minimal, at least in the early stages. The Dominion has no defense against the Artemis network, and our ship-based weapons are significantly more advanced than anything they possess. However, as we push deeper into their territory, resistance will stiffen. They will learn from their mistakes. They will adapt. And at the end, when we reach the homeworlds, that will be the most difficult phase. The Velthari will fight to the death to protect their core worlds. We estimate significant casualties, possibly hundreds of thousands of our soldiers. There was silence around the table. Hundreds of thousands of lives. It was a staggering number, even for leaders who were accustomed to making difficult decisions. The British Prime Minister spoke quietly. Is there no alternative? No way to end this conflict without so much bloodshed? We will offer them the chance to surrender, Chen Wei said. Before each major offensive, we will transmit ultimatums demanding the dissolution of the Dominion and the release of all conquered species. But I must be honest with you. I do not expect them to accept. The Velthari have been conquerors for 10,000 years. They do not know how to be anything else. Then we have no choice, the Japanese Prime Minister said. We must see this through to the end. The Dominion came for us. They would have murdered billions of innocent people without a moment's hesitation. We cannot allow that threat to remain. Heads nodded around the table. The decision had been made long ago, really. The moment the first Velthari scout ship had discovered humanity, the war had become inevitable. The only question had been when it would begin. Now it had begun, and humanity intended to win. There is one more matter, Chen Wei said. The message we transmitted to Admiral Krixaveth was also broadcast on frequencies that the Dominion's home sector will receive. In approximately 14 years, the Emperor himself will learn what happened here. He will see recordings of his fleet being destroyed. He will hear our declaration of intent. And how do you think he will respond? With terror, I hope. The Velthari have never faced an enemy they could not defeat. They have never encountered a technology they could not understand. When they realize what we can do, when they understand that we are coming for them, I expect panic. I expect their empire to start fracturing, as subject species see an opportunity for liberation. She smiled coldly. By the time our fleets reach their territory, the The Dominion may already be in chaos. Our agents are in position to encourage that chaos. When the moment is right, we will ignite rebellions across their empire. They will be fighting on 100 fronts at once, unable to concentrate their forces, unable to coordinate their defense. You have been planning this for a long time, 300 years. Every contingency has been considered. Every scenario has been war-gamed. We know the Dominion better than they know themselves, and we know exactly how to break them. The meeting continued for several more hours, as the coalition's leaders discussed logistics, deployments, and diplomatic strategies. By the time it ended, the broad outlines of humanity's war against the Dominion had been established. The fleets would launch in 6 months. The ultimatums would be sent, and if the Velthari refused to surrender, they would face consequences that their species had never imagined. When the conference room finally emptied, Chen Wei remained alone with her thoughts. She stared at the blank view screen, thinking about the future that awaited them all. Humanity was about to become the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. They would control weapons that could destroy stars. They would command fleets that could conquer entire systems in hours. They would possess knowledge and technology that no other species had ever achieved. It was a terrifying amount of power, and Chen Wei knew, better than anyone, how easily power could corrupt. She thought about the Velthari. 10,000 years ago, they had probably been much like humanity, ambitious, curious, driven to explore and expand. But somewhere along the way, they had lost their way. They had become conquerors instead of explorers. They had learned to see other species as resources to be exploited rather than civilizations to be respected. Would humanity follow the same path? Would they look back in 10,000 years and see that they had become what they once hated? Chen Wei did not know. No one could know. The future was uncertain, full of dangers and possibilities that could not be predicted. All she could do was try to guide her species in the right direction and hope that it would be enough. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Chen Wei activated her personal screen and found a report from the Artemis Network Central AI. The system was requesting permission to begin expanding into the outer solar system, preparing additional defense layers for the eventual Dominion counterattack. She approved the request without hesitation. Whatever doubts she had about the future, one thing was certain. Humanity needed to be strong. They needed to be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, because the galaxy was a dangerous place, full of predators and pirates and species that would destroy them without a second thought. The Velthari had taught them that lesson, and humanity had learned it well. Far from Earth, in a system that human astronomers had catalogued as HD 40307, a young Velthari officer named Tirix stood on the bridge of a patrol ship and wondered why his commanders seemed so nervous. The rumors had been spreading for days. Something had happened at the edge of the galaxy. A battle of some kind. A disaster. But the details were vague, and official channels remained silent. All Tirix knew was that the Admiralty had ordered increased readiness across the sector, and that senior officers were holding whispered conversations that stopped whenever junior crew members approached. "You have heard the rumors?" asked his friend Krathine, a weapons officer who had served with Tirix for 3 years. "Everyone has heard them, but no one knows what they mean. My cousin serves in the strategic planning division. He says that the invasion fleet that was sent to conquer that primitive species the humans never returned. All 12,000 ships, gone." Tirix stared at his friend in disbelief. "That is impossible. 12,000 ships could conquer half the galaxy. How could they simply disappear? That is what everyone wants to know. The Emperor has ordered a complete information lockdown. No one is allowed to discuss the matter. But the fleet is gone, Tirix. Something destroyed it. Something? Or someone?" Krathine's scales paled slightly. "My cousin heard another rumor. He said that before the fleet was destroyed, they received a message. A threat. The humans said they were coming for us. For the Dominion itself. That is ridiculous. The humans are primitives. They have no faster-than-light capability. Even if they somehow destroyed our fleet, they could not reach our territory. I hope you are right. I truly do. But I have never seen the Admiralty so frightened. Whatever happened out there, it has changed everything." Tirix was about to respond when the ship's alert system suddenly activated. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. The captain's voice came over the intercom, sharp with barely controlled panic. All hands to battle stations. Unknown contact detected. Multiple signatures. They are coming out of hyperspace directly ahead. Tirixah ran to his console and called up the sensor data. What he saw made his blood run cold. Ships were emerging from hyperspace. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Then thousands. They were unlike anything in the Velthari database, sleek and angular. Their hulls black as night. Their engines burning with an unfamiliar blue light. They moved with perfect precision, forming up into a formation that bristled with weapons. "What are those?" Krathian whispered. "Where did they come from?" Tirixah shook his head, unable to speak. His console was analyzing the incoming vessels, trying to identify their technology, their weapons, their point of origin. The results made no sense. The ships were human. That was impossible. The humans did not have interstellar capability. They were trapped in their own system, unable to travel between stars. Everyone knew that, but the evidence was right in front of him. Human vessels, thousands of them, emerging from hyperspace at the edge of Velthari territory. They had not just destroyed the invasion fleet. They had crossed the galaxy to bring the war to the Dominion's own doorstep. A transmission came through on all frequencies. A human female appeared on the view screen, her face calm, her voice steady. Tirixah recognized her somehow, though he had never seen her before. Perhaps from some intelligence briefing. Perhaps from a nightmare. "This message is for the people of the Velthari Dominion," she said. "I am Director Chen Wei of the United Human Coalition. 14 years ago, your empire sent a fleet to conquer our world. That fleet was destroyed." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We have spent those 14 years preparing for this moment. Building ships, training soldiers, studying your weaknesses. We know everything about your empire, every homeworld, every military base, every strategic installation. And now we have come to deliver a simple message." Her eyes hardened. "Surrender. Dissolve your empire. Release all the species you have conquered. Accept human oversight of your military forces. If you refuse, we will destroy you. Not your fleets, not your bases. You. Every Velthari world, every Velthari city, every Velthari life. This is not a threat. This is a promise." The transmission ended. The view screen went dark. And in the silence that followed, Tirixah understood that the universe had changed forever. The humans had come. And they were not prey. They were predators. The most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever seen. On the bridge of her flagship, the Times Vengeance of Terra Asterisk, Admiral Sarah Yoshida watched the Velthari patrol ships scatter before her fleet. They were running, desperately trying to escape, to warn their commanders, to spread the news of what they had seen. She let them go. She wanted them to spread the news. She wanted every Velthari in the galaxy to know what was coming. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "all ships are in position. We are ready to begin the assault on the supply depot." "Good. Launch the attack. No survivors, no mercy." The fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. In minutes, the Velthari installation was reduced to dust. The first battle of humanity's war against the Dominion had been won before it had barely begun. Yoshida stood on her bridge and smiled. This was just the beginning. There were thousands of targets waiting to be destroyed. Millions of slaves waiting to be freed. An entire empire waiting to be brought down. And humanity had all the time in the galaxy. Behind her, through the viewport, the stars burned cold and eternal. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for billions of years. They had seen species born and die, empires grow and crumble, wars rage and end. Now they would watch something new. They would watch humanity claim its place among the stars, not as prey, not as primitives, but as conquerors, as liberators, as the species that had faced the greatest threat in galactic history and emerged victorious. The Velthari Dominion had ruled for 10,000 years. Their time was over, and humanity's time had just begun.